Welcome to Read and Learn English. If you've ever felt frustrated speaking English perfectly, but still sounding unnatural, you're in the right place. In this video, you'll discover the secret exercise native speakers use to sound fluent and confident, even if you've been studying English for years. By the end of this lesson, you won't just improve your vocabulary or grammar. You'll speak English that feels alive, natural, and effortless, just like a native speaker. This video is perfect for English learners, level A2 to B2. So whether you're a beginner or upper intermediate, you'll be able to follow along and practice immediately. Here's the promise. In the next 30 minutes, you'll learn a step-by-step technique that combines listening, rhythm, and emotion. You'll see exactly how to move your words naturally, so every conversation feels smooth, confident, and meaningful. Stay with me until the very end, because the method we'll cover is not taught in textbooks. It's something natives do without even thinking. And now, you'll learn to do it too. By watching this video, you're not only improving your English, you're transforming the way you speak, think, and express yourself. So take a deep breath, relax, and get ready to discover the secret that can turn your English from robotic to natural. Let's start this journey together and unlock the voice you've always wanted to have. The hidden struggle. Every English learner knows this feeling, the strange, quiet frustration that lives between the words you say and the way you wish they sounded. You spend years learning grammar, memorizing phrases, watching videos, and practicing pronunciation. Yet, when you finally open your mouth, the sound feels flat, robotic, empty of the warmth you hear in native speakers. You speak correctly, but it doesn't feel alive. You see, grammar gives you the structure, but it doesn't give you the soul. Many learners believe that once they master grammar, fluency will follow naturally, but it doesn't. Grammar is the skeleton of a language. Rhythm and emotion are its heartbeat. Without that heartbeat, words can move, but they cannot touch. Let's return to Lena, the same student from before. She knew her grammar perfectly. Every sentence she said was clean, accurate, and polite. Yet when she joined an English meeting at work, her heart raced. She repeated sentences in her head before speaking, afraid to make a mistake. When she finally spoke, her words were correct, but slow, stiff, and cautious. Her colleagues understood her, but she felt invisible, like her voice didn't belong in the room. That's the hidden struggle, to be understood but not connected. It's like standing outside a warm house on a cold night. You can see the light, hear the laughter, but you're still behind the glass. You're speaking English, but you don't feel part of it. Many learners face this quietly. They know the right phrases, but they hesitate before speaking. They replay conversations in their mind after they end, thinking, "I knew what to say. Why didn't it sound natural?" It's not lack of intelligence or effort. It's the missing rhythm between the mind and the mouth. When we learn English in classrooms, we focus on logic, rules, sentence patterns, and definitions. But real speech doesn't follow rules. It follows flow. Native speakers don't think about grammar when they talk. They think in feelings and pictures. Their speech moves like water, flexible, spontaneous, alive. Learners, on the other hand, often speak like walking on stones, one word at a time, afraid to slip. And that fear changes everything. Fear makes your muscles tight. Your voice gets smaller. Your rhythm disappears. You start to control every sound, and in that control, you lose connection. Lena once described it like this: "It's as if my English voice wears a mask. It looks fine, but it doesn't smile." She wanted to sound natural, not perfect, but she didn't know how to cross that invisible line. This struggle isn't just about pronunciation or grammar. It's about emotion. When you feel nervous, your brain focuses on safety, not expression. You begin to protect your mistakes instead of expressing your thoughts. That's why so many learners say, "I can speak better in my head than out loud." The words are there, but the flow is locked behind tension. Think of English like a dance. Grammar tells you the steps, but rhythm tells you how to move. Many learners learn every step, but never dance with the music. That's why native speakers sound free, not because they're smarter, but because they move with the language instead of controlling it. There's also a deeper pain here: identity. When you speak another language, you don't just translate your words, you translate yourself. You want people to feel you, your humor, your warmth, your confidence. But when your speech sounds unnatural, it feels like your true self is hidden behind the grammar. You're there, but slightly muted. And this is where most learners give up. They think, maybe I'll never sound natural. Maybe it's only for natives. But that's not true. Sounding natural isn't about birthplace. It's about connection. It's about learning to feel the rhythm, not just understand it. You see, the problem isn't your grammar. It's your relationship with English. You've been told to focus on correctness, when what truly brings fluency is flow. To sound natural, you must stop thinking like a student and start feeling like a speaker, relaxed, expressive, alive. So, take a moment and ask yourself, when you speak English, do you focus on being correct or being connected? Because that small change in focus can completely transform your fluency. If grammar isn't the answer, then what is? Let's uncover what native speakers do differently. Something invisible, yet powerful. The discovery. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was sitting in a small cafe waiting for my coffee when I heard two native speakers talking at the next table. Their conversation wasn't special, just about work, lunch, and weekend plans. But something about it caught my attention. It wasn't the words, it was the movement of their voices, the rhythm, the flow, the way their sentences rose, fell, paused, and laughed together. It sounded alive, like music written in sound instead of notes. As they spoke, I realized something simple yet powerful. They weren't just using English. They were dancing with it. Their words didn't feel like they were being built. They felt like they were being released. There was rhythm in their breathing, emotion in their pauses, and meaning in their silence. Even when one said only, "Yeah, I know," it carried a whole story, tone, mood, and connection. I remember thinking, this is what's missing when learners speak. It's not vocabulary. It's not accent. It's flow. Native speakers don't speak word by word. They speak thought by thought. Each idea comes out like a small wave that touches the next one. They don't stop to translate or plan. They feel the idea and let it move through them. At that cafe, something clicked inside me. I began to listen differently. I noticed how they didn't pronounce every single word perfectly. Sometimes they connected sounds together. Sometimes they dropped a word. But it didn't matter, because the rhythm carried the meaning. It was natural. effortless, real. That day, I decided to experiment. When I got home, I opened a video of a native speaker telling a story. I didn't just listen. I tried something new. I paused after each sentence and repeated it. Not just the words, but the tone, the rise and fall, the little breath before a thought. I copied the feeling more than the sound. And something strange happened. When I repeated the words this way, I could feel the English differently, inside my body. The sentences started to move with rhythm, almost like they had life. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about grammar or rules. I was feeling the pulse of the language. That was my discovery, the secret exercise that native speakers do without realizing it. It's called shadow speaking, but not the mechanical kind, not the kind where you repeat words like a robot. This version is emotional. You listen deeply, and then you shadow the rhythm, the thought, and the energy behind each sentence. When you do this, you stop studying English. You start feeling it. Your mouth learns to move naturally. Your brain learns to think in rhythm. Your heart learns to express emotion through sound. It's like breathing English instead of building it. Imagine watching two friends talk and noticing how their laughter interrupts a sentence, how their tone softens when they care, how their voices rise with excitement. That's not grammar, that's humanity. And shadow speaking lets you step into that humanity. It lets you become part of the sound. This discovery changes everything. Because when you shadow, you don't just copy. You connect. You listen with your whole being. You start to notice details you never heard before. The small pauses, the melody of stress and tone, the rhythm that gives English its music. And slowly, something begins to shift. The distance between you and English starts to fade. You stop feeling like an outsider borrowing a language and start feeling like a speaker who belongs inside it. That's the power of this secret. It's not about imitation. It's about immersion. It's not about perfection. It's about presence. From that day on, I never listened to English the same way again. Every movie, every podcast, every conversation became a rhythm lesson. I could hear the beat, the flow, the emotion behind each phrase, and that rhythm started to live inside me. So the mystery was no longer why natives sound natural. The real question became, what happens when a learner starts to practice this way? The first attempt. Lena sat alone in her small room, laptop open, headphones on. The video she had chosen was short, a native speaker telling a simple story about childhood. She pressed play, listening carefully, her notebook ready. The voice was warm, full of rhythm, alive with emotion. Every sentence sounded easy, until she tried to repeat it. The first few seconds felt fine. She copied the words slowly, trying to sound the same. But soon, frustration began to rise. Her tongue felt heavy. Her voice didn't match the rhythm. She couldn't catch the speed, the pauses, the soft ups and downs. Each attempt sounded like an echo, close but not quite alive. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. "This is impossible," she whispered. Then she tried again, and again. Every time she could feel the tension building, in her jaw, her shoulders, her breath. She wasn't just fighting the language, she was fighting herself. That's how every first attempt begins. You want to sound natural, but you feel unnatural. You want to express freely, but you sound mechanical. You know what to do, but your body doesn't follow. It's like learning to dance when your legs refuse to move. You can see the rhythm, but you can't yet feel it inside you. Lena took a deep breath and tried a different line. When I was a kid, I loved the rain. The native voice said it softly, like a memory. She repeated it, too fast the first time, too flat the next. She tried again, adjusting her tone, her rhythm, her breath. And after 5 tries, she felt something, a small shift. The sentence began to flow. But just when she felt hope, the next line broke it again. Her tongue stumbled. Her confidence fell. She wanted to stop. A thought appeared in her mind. Maybe I'll never sound natural. Maybe this is only for them. That moment, the quiet moment of doubt, is where most learners stop. Not because they can't do it, but because they can't stand how it feels at the beginning. It feels clumsy. It feels fake. It feels like pretending. But that awkwardness isn't failure. It's the first sign of growth. Every muscle that learns something new must first feel uncomfortable. Lena didn't know it yet, but her brain was building new connections, tiny bridges between sound, breath, and emotion. Each awkward repetition was training her ear, her rhythm, her confidence, but she couldn't see that progress. All she could feel was frustration. She paused the video and looked at her reflection in the dark screen. "Why can't I sound natural?" she asked quietly. Her voice cracked with tiredness. The truth was, she wasn't used to feeling while speaking English. For years, she had been taught to think first, speak second. But native speakers do the opposite. They feel first, express second. That difference changes everything. When Lena realized that, she closed her notebook. Instead of writing or planning, she just listened again. This time, with her eyes closed. She followed the speaker's rhythm with her breath. She let her voice join softly, not perfectly, but gently. For the first time, she wasn't copying. She was connecting. And slowly, she noticed a strange thing. Her shoulders relaxed. Her tone softened. The words started to move more easily, like they were finding their own path. It still wasn't perfect, far from it, but it didn't feel robotic anymore. It felt human. That's the magic of the first attempt. It's messy, confusing, and full of self-doubt. But beneath that chaos, something beautiful is beginning. Freedom. Freedom from overthinking. Freedom from perfection. Freedom from the fear of sounding silly. Most learners never reach that moment because they quit too soon. They see the awkwardness as a sign of failure, not a step toward flow. But the truth is, every native speaker was once awkward too, just not in English. Every fluent voice you admire was built through repetition, rhythm, and patience. As the night grew late, Lena smiled for the first time. She still didn't sound native, but she could feel something changing inside her. The words were starting to breathe, and even though she was tired, she felt a quiet pride, not because she had mastered the exercise, but because she hadn't given up. When she turned off the laptop, her room was silent again. Yet in that silence, she could still hear the rhythm echoing in her mind. Soft, steady, alive. She whispered to herself, maybe it's not about being perfect. Maybe it's about feeling free. And that realization was the beginning of everything. Because when a learner refuses to quit, when they keep practicing through the awkwardness, something magical begins to happen. The shift in rhythm. Days turned into weeks. The same exercise that once felt impossible now felt different. Lena still practiced in her quiet room, but the silence didn't scare her anymore. Each morning, she would press play, listen, and shadow along. The words that once tangled her tongue now began to flow, almost like a song. Something inside her was changing. She could feel it. At first, she thought it was just her pronunciation improving, but one morning, she noticed something deeper. The words were no longer separate sounds. They were connecting, melting into each other. I want to go wasn't I want to go anymore. It had turned into one soft rhythm. I want to go. She smiled. It's like music, she whispered. For the first time, English didn't feel like a list of rules. It felt alive, like a melody she could dance with. She realized that native speakers don't speak word by word. They speak thought by thought. Every sentence has a rhythm, a flow, a feeling. When they talk, their voice rises and falls naturally, not because of grammar, but because of emotion. And that's what Lena began to feel. When she said, I didn't mean to, she no longer thought about the tenses or grammar. She said it with a sigh, with feeling. When she said, that's amazing, her voice lifted, full of surprise. The meaning wasn't just in the words, it was in the rhythm, the music behind them. That was the shift. She started to hear English differently. She could catch the tiny waves in people's voices, when they paused, when they emphasized, when they smiled while speaking. She noticed that a short pause could change the whole feeling of a sentence. One evening, while listening to two native speakers chatting in a cafe recording, she caught herself smiling again. They weren't speaking fast, they were flowing. It wasn't about speed. It was about rhythm, timing, and trust in the moment. That night, when Lena practiced, she didn't look at her notebook. She didn't even think about correctness. She just listened and followed the emotion. Hey, how's it going? Her voice bounced lightly, like she was greeting an old friend. Not bad. Just a little tired. Her tone dropped softly, just like the speaker's. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. The connection she once dreamed of was starting to appear, not because her grammar changed, but because her rhythm did. She had started to feel the pulse of English, the invisible heartbeat behind every conversation. And that changed everything. When she talked to a friend online, her sentences flowed without stopping to translate. Her voice carried more confidence, more life. The friend noticed immediately. Your English sounds different, more natural, he said. Lena laughed. Really? I didn't even notice. That's the beauty of rhythm. It's not forced. It's felt. She began to understand that English rhythm isn't about perfect pronunciation. It's about connection. When you listen deeply and speak with emotion, your words start to align with your thoughts. Your breath carries meaning. Your pauses give space for understanding. Slowly, she realized something profound. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking in flow. Each time she practiced, she could feel her body relax more. The stiffness disappeared. The fear faded. What once felt like a wall was now a rhythm she could dance with. And that's when hope began to grow. Quietly, but powerfully. She thought back to her first day, the frustration, the doubt. Now, that same exercise felt joyful, even freeing. She finally understood what it meant to sound natural, not by trying to be someone else, but by finding her own rhythm within the language. As she closed her eyes after practice, she could still hear the flow in her mind, soft, gentle, alive. She smiled, whispering to herself, "Maybe I can sound natural too." And that thought, that spark of belief, changed everything. Because once you begin to feel the rhythm, you stop chasing perfection, you start connecting, you start expressing, you start living in the language. Yet, there was still something deeper to learn. The rhythm was only the beginning. If grammar wasn't the answer, and rhythm was the key, then what guided native speakers so effortlessly? What was happening inside their mind when they spoke? Lena leaned forward, ready for the next discovery. The mind of a native speaker. What really happens inside a native speaker's mind when they speak? It's not translation, it's not memory, it's flow. When a native speaker says, "I don't know," they don't build the sentence word by word. I don't know. They feel a thought and let it fall out as sound. The idea comes first, and the words follow naturally. It's not grammar, it's emotion shaping rhythm. That's the invisible difference between learners and natives. Most learners speak from the head. Natives speak from the heart. Learners often think in their first language, then translate each sentence into English. But translation is slow, heavy, and full of hesitation. It traps you inside structure and correctness. That's why sentences sound robotic, because they're constructed, not felt. Native speakers, on the other hand, don't reach for words. They reach for feelings. They think in rhythm. They breathe in emotion. And they let thought flow as voice. When you hear someone say, "That's so cool," it's not just vocabulary. It's the tone, the emotion behind the sound, surprise, delight, connection. The mind, the body, and the voice are in perfect sync. That's the secret learners must uncover. How to think like that. Lena began to see this truth after weeks of shadow speaking. She realized she was still thinking too much, choosing words instead of ideas. So she tried something new. Before repeating a line, she stopped and asked herself, "What is this person feeling?" In one video, a speaker said, "I can't believe this happened!" Lena didn't rush to copy. She closed her eyes and imagined the emotion, shock, disbelief, excitement. Then she said it again, not as practice, but as a reaction. "I can't believe this happened." It felt real. It was real. That moment changed everything. Because suddenly, she understood. Native speakers don't act. They react. Their mind doesn't plan the perfect sentence. It responds to emotion. Every phrase in English carries energy. When someone says, "Are you serious?" it might sound curious, sarcastic, or surprised, depending on the emotion behind it. And native speakers feel that difference instantly because they think in emotional chunks. An emotional chunk isn't a full sentence. It's a small package of feeling and rhythm. Like, "Oh no." "You're kidding." "I know, right?" Or "Come on." They're short, natural, alive. And they appear in conversation without effort. Lena started to listen for those chunks. She noticed how they repeated everywhere. In movies, podcasts, daily talk. They were the glue that made English flow. When she practiced shadowing, she began to feel these chunks as one unit, not as words, but as emotions. "I don't know" became a soft sigh. "Let's go" became a burst of energy. Her thinking started to shift. She was no longer translating "I'm tired" from her native language. She was feeling tired, then letting English express it. That's the true mind of a native speaker. A mind that feels first, speaks second, Once Lena understood this, she realized something profound. To sound natural, you don't need to memorize more words. You need to connect thought, emotion, and breath. When you breathe before speaking, your body naturally finds rhythm. Your thoughts line up with your tone. Your words ride on your feeling, not on pressure. That's why fluent speakers seem relaxed. Their breath moves with their ideas. Their pauses aren't mistakes. They're part of meaning. So Lena began practicing this too. Before shadowing, she took a slow breath, let her body relax, and imagined the scene of the sentence. She stopped chasing perfect grammar. Instead, she let the sentence live inside her. When she said, "I'm not sure," she pictured the small hesitation. When she said, "That's amazing," she smiled as she spoke. When she said, "It's okay," she softened her tone, as if comforting a friend. The magic wasn't in the words. It was in how she thought before them. Little by little, she was stepping into the mind of a native speaker, where speaking isn't a performance, but a reflection of thought, where words flow like breath. This was the real secret behind fluency. Native speakers aren't thinking about English. They're thinking through English. Their brain doesn't ask, "What's the right word?" It asks, "What do I want to feel and express?" And when that happens, language becomes effortless. Lena felt lighter. For the first time, English wasn't something she used. It was something she lived in. She could hear herself laugh, react, and express naturally, not because she memorized phrases, but because she had stepped into the rhythm of thought itself. Now, the exercise had changed completely. It wasn't about the mouth anymore. It wasn't about copying sounds. It was about training the mind to think in emotion, rhythm, and flow. She smiled quietly to herself, realizing that she had just crossed a line few learners ever do. The secret exercise had evolved. It was no longer about repeating what others say. It was about feeling what they feel and making it her own. The secret exercise revealed. There is a simple practice that changes everything. It looks small, almost too simple to work. But like all real changes, it begins with one honest action: to listen differently. First, find short native clips, a movie line, a podcast sentence, a YouTube phrase. Choose something with feeling, something that moves you. Let the voice wash over you once, just as a listener. Don't worry about words or grammar. Listen for the rhythm under the words, for the breath that comes before an idea, for the tiny pauses where meaning rests. Next, listen again, but this time notice tone and emotion. Where does the voice lift with joy? Where does it fall with sadness? Where does the speaker smile between syllables? Pay attention to the small moments where meaning sits in silence. This is not study, it is attention. You are training your ear to hear English as music, not as a list. Now try shadowing, but not the way you may have tried before. Don't copy like a robot. Instead, move with the sound. Allow your body to follow the rhythm. If the speaker breathes in the middle, breathe with them. If they pause, feel the space and then step into it. Match the feeling more than the sentence. If they sound surprised, let surprise lift your voice. If they sound gentle, soften your tone. Shadowing like this joins thought, breath, and emotion. Your voice becomes the echo of a feeling, not the echo of a rule. Make this a daily practice. 10 minutes every morning works better than one long session once a week. Short, consistent repetition rewires your ear and calms the fear that makes your voice small. Each day, pick a new clip or return to the same line until it lives in you. Notice small changes. Your jaw relaxes, your breath grows steadier, your pauses become natural. These tiny shifts are proof that your inner rhythm is learning to speak English. Treat the exercise like a meditation. Sit quietly, close your eyes sometimes, and feel the words inside you. Let the language move through your body. This is not imitation. It is a rehearsal of feeling. Through the practice, you will discover that native speakers are not using secret grammar. They are using presence. They listen to meaning first and words second. When you practice presence, your English becomes honest and expressive. Remember to be gentle with yourself. The first weeks are awkward. You will feel foolish. That discomfort is the doorway to growth. When a child falls while learning to walk, we do not criticize them for falling. We encourage the rise. Treat your voice with the same kindness. Celebrate small victories, a pause that feels right, a laugh that fits, a sentence that arrives without force. These moments show that rhythm is replacing fear. As the practice continues, your brain begins to change. Repetition links emotion to sound. Your body learns to breathe with phrases. Your mouth, jaw, and chest remember the music of English. Conversations become lighter. You stop editing before you speak. You begin to react naturally, like you would in your native language. This shift is quiet at first, then undeniable. The secret exercise is more than a language hack. It is a daily habit that rebuilds how you think and feel while speaking English. It turns study into embodiment. It teaches you to arrive in a sentence with your whole self, thought, breath, and feeling. When you make it part of your life, English stops being a subject and becomes a way to express your heart. In time, you gain a quiet confidence. It sits in your chest when you speak and lets your voice relax. That confidence grows from feeling the language before you say it. It grows through small wins. A friend smiling at your tone, a listener pausing because you left space, a sentence that lands. These moments show your voice is learning to belong. The exercise reshapes how you listen. You begin to hear who speaks behind the words. You notice music in an apology, warmth in a joke, hesitation in silence. People respond to presence more than perfect grammar. Connection makes language alive. To deepen the work, record yourself sometimes. Listen not to correct, but to feel. Notice where your voice tightens and where it breathes. Celebrate parts that sound like you. Over weeks, patterns appear and you can guide them into smoother rhythm. Always return to emotion. It is the compass pointing to natural speech. This practice asks you to be listener and responder, not a student alone. Bring your heart to the sentence. When you do, English becomes a place to be human. But what happens when this practice becomes a habit? The transformation. At first, it was practice, a routine, a task, a small promise to try every morning. But one day, something changed. The learner pressed play on a familiar clip and began to shadow as usual. Only this time, the words didn't feel like effort. They flowed. There was no counting beats, no chasing rhythm. It felt like breathing, natural, effortless, alive. The sound of English no longer sat outside the learner's world. It had become part of it. In real conversations, something beautiful began to happen. The pauses grew shorter. The fear of mistakes started to fade. Words connected, not by force, but by feeling. It wasn't about performing anymore. It was about connecting. The learner found themselves laughing during a chat, responding without planning, listening deeply. The mind wasn't translating. It was living in English. This is the moment where practice becomes transformation. Neuroscientists call it rewiring, but to the learner, it feels like freedom. The brain, once full of hesitation and grammar checks, begins to trust itself. Neural paths that once signaled fear are replaced by patterns of rhythm and flow. Each repetition, every emotional shadowing session, strengthens the connection between language and confidence. What once took effort now feels like instinct. Think about it. When you walk, you don't think about which foot moves first. When you breathe, you don't command your lungs. In the same way, the learner's speech begins to move on its own. The sound, the tone, the pauses, all shaped by hours of emotional repetition, now live inside the subconscious. The body remembers what the mind once doubted. It's no longer about sounding like a native speaker. It's about feeling like a human being who belongs in the language. The learner starts noticing things beyond words, the warmth in a greeting, the comfort in a shared laugh, the weight of a sincere thank you. English is no longer a wall to climb. It's a bridge that carries meaning. One evening, the learner joins a group conversation. The topic shifts quickly, everyone speaking with energy. A few months ago, this moment would have been terrifying. The fear of falling behind, the panic of missing a phrase. But now, the learner listens, smiles, and joins in naturally. The voice moves with confidence, not perfect, but present. People respond with interest. The learner feels it, connection, belonging, freedom. This is the real reward of the secret exercise. It was never about pronunciation alone. It was about releasing the voice trapped beneath years of self-doubt. Every shadowed sentence was a rehearsal of courage. Every pause was a breath of trust. The learner has not just improved, they have changed. The transformation goes deeper than language. The same rhythm that shaped the learner's English begins to shape their life. They listen more closely. They speak with patience. They breathe before reacting. The awareness built in shadowing of tone, pause, and feeling spills into daily life. The learner begins to move through the world with a quiet rhythm, one that others can sense. The contrast is clear. What began as effort now lives as ease. What once felt like performance has become presence. The learner no longer asks, "Am I speaking correctly?" but instead, "Am I expressing truthfully?" That is the moment fluency becomes freedom, when your voice and yourself finally move together. Because real mastery isn't about sounding perfect. It's about sounding alive. When the learner speaks now, it's not only English they're sharing. It's their story, their emotion, their identity. The language has become a mirror, reflecting a confident, expressive self that was always waiting to emerge. And soon, sounding natural becomes more than speech. It becomes a way of living. Speaking with soul. Fluency is no longer about grammar or accent. It is about presence. When the learner speaks now, every word carries a part of themselves, their thought, their feeling, their rhythm. English becomes more than a language. It becomes a reflection of life. Every pause, every rise and fall of tone, every breath between phrases is a small act of authenticity. People notice it, even if they cannot explain why. Presence speaks louder than perfection. The learner begins to realize that speaking naturally is like sharing a piece of your soul. When you speak from emotion, your voice resonates. Listeners respond not to the correctness of your words, but to the energy behind them. That is why some people feel alive in conversation, while others seem flat. It is the difference between speaking with a voice and speaking with a soul. This understanding transforms not only English, but life itself. Listening carefully, responding fully, and breathing into words become habits. The learner notices small details, the way a friend softens a question, the subtle lift of excitement in a story, the pause that carries meaning. These patterns are not just sounds, they are living connections. When the learner mirrors them with awareness and feeling, they step into the flow of genuine communication. English, once a set of rules, becomes a tool for expression. Each sentence is a bridge between mind, body, and heart. Speaking slowly, listening deeply, and letting emotion guide rhythm creates connection. The learner sees that fluency is not speed or flawless pronunciation. It is the harmony between thought, feeling, and sound. The impact is subtle but profound. Conversations become lighter, more fluid. Friends notice the natural confidence in the learner's voice. Work meetings feel easier. Even in small moments like asking for directions or ordering coffee, the learner moves with ease and clarity. Every interaction is an opportunity to express truthfully, to connect fully. Speaking with soul also changes self-perception. The learner no longer worries about mistakes. Mistakes are simply part of expression, part of the flow. Confidence grows because the focus has shifted from fear of being judged to the joy of being heard. The language no longer feels like a barrier, but like a companion. Ultimately, natural speech mirrors life. Just as presence in conversation matters more than perfection in words, presence in life matters more than control over outcomes. The secret exercise has taught more than English. It has taught awareness, patience, and authenticity. Speaking with soul is the bridge between learning a language and living it fully. Now, the learner understands that fluency is not about sounding like someone else. It is about becoming fully yourself, in rhythm, in feeling, in voice. Every word becomes an act of connection, every pause an invitation to be present. English is no longer a tool for communication alone. It is a way to share life. Closing reflection. Remember at the beginning when we asked, why do natives sound so natural? It felt like a mystery, a secret locked behind years of speaking practice and intuition. We thought it was pronunciation, grammar, or even intelligence. But now, after the journey, the answer is clear. Native speakers sound natural because they live the language, with rhythm, emotion, and connection. They think in feeling, they breathe in timing, and they let words flow from the heart. The learner in our story has discovered this truth firsthand. Through shadowing, awareness, and practice, English became more than a subject to study. It became a companion, a mirror, a bridge between mind and emotion. The awkwardness of the first attempts transformed into flow. The fear of mistakes melted into presence, and the mechanical repetition turned into rhythm. Words no longer feel like obstacles. They feel like breathing, like music, like life. This transformation is not magic. It is deliberate, patient, and emotional. Each day of practice strengthens the connection between thought, feeling, and voice. Each pause learned, each rise and fall of tone absorbed, rewires the brain to think and speak in rhythm rather than translation. Confidence grows quietly, steadily, like a tree stretching toward the sun. And just as rhythm brings words to life, presence brings conversations to meaning. Fluency, then, is not perfection. It is authenticity. It is showing up in each sentence fully, with awareness, with emotion, with honesty. It is not about sounding like someone else. It is about sounding like yourself in English. That is the real secret. Natural speech is not borrowed. It is lived. As you reflect on your own learning, remember this. Every moment of practice matters. Every short clip you shadow, every pause you honor, every emotional chunk you repeat is a step closer to finding your own voice. English is not just a tool for communication. It is a path of personal growth, a way to explore patience, rhythm, and presence. It teaches not only how to speak, but how to listen to yourself and to others with care. And now, the invitation is yours. Practice this secret every day, not to sound like someone else, but to find your natural English voice. Let rhythm guide you, let emotion lead you, and let connection carry you. Speak from the heart, pause with intention, breathe with awareness. In time, the voice that once sounded hesitant and distant will become confident, fluid, and alive. You will not just speak English, you will experience it. Thank yourself for showing up. Thank yourself for the courage to try, to stumble, to feel awkward, and to persist. Every attempt, every shadowed sentence, every moment of listening deeply is proof of growth. Gratitude for this journey will fill your learning with joy, making each practice session a meditation, each conversation a celebration. So, as we close this story, know that the mystery is no longer outside you. The secret has been revealed: rhythm, emotion, presence. Your voice, your breath, your thought, and your feeling are enough. English can now be a living part of your life, a reflection of who you are and who you are becoming. Carry this lesson with you. Speak with intention. Listen with heart. Practice with patience. And above all, remember, fluency is not a destination. It is a journey, one that begins with presence, one word at a time. Practice this secret every day, not to sound like someone else, but to find your natural English voice.